Before we start this video, a large and massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their continued and immense support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely and greatly appreciated, gentlemen. I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, today we're going to continue with shops, and by the end of the video you'll be able to purchase items from the shop. It will reflect what you're purchasing it for, and it will reflect the item name. So let's first go to the item base class, and let's make a value to determine what the item is going to cost. I make it public int. I'm just going to call this item value. We'll defaultly set it to 100. Now I'm going to quickly off camera here make a bunch of headers because I don't like the way this looks. There we go. Through the magic of editing, I am back. I've not added anything. I've just added a bunch of headers. This is just for me mostly. Now I will add a new value though. I'm going to add a public bool, and we're going to call this isInfinite. And this is only going to be used if you're in a shop. So basically it's going to determine if the item can be resold over and over again without detracting from the amount. Now, if we go to our AI character inventory manager, right now we're just putting these items in the inventory, but we shouldn't do that because we're buying them and we want to edit their amount. Why? Well, if I go to the base item here, you can see I have a current amount, but if I change this to 5, since this is a scriptable object, I'm changing now, every time you instantiate a new straight sort, it'll be at 5. So just like before, we should always instantiate copies of the item before we actually edit the scriptable object. And to do that, we're going to make basically a shop vendor inventory. Now, you could make, because we're going to need the item IDs, or rather the raw items if you prefer, and we're going to need a count for each of those items. And then we're going to know if any of those items are infinite. So, for example, the shop might stock an infinite amount of long swords, but maybe only one of a special item. So because of that, we need 3 sets of information: the item, the amount that we're selling of each item, and if the item amount is infinite. So you could take these 3 lists here, and we could do it this way right here, but we're going to make it a little bit cleaner. Let's go to our items folder in scripts. Let's create a new script, and I'm just going to call this character shop. And let's open that up, and let's delete the start and update functionality as per tradition. Drop in a namespace SG, and I am going to make this derived from a scriptable object. Alright, so let's make a create asset menu, because we're going to create this in our project and drag it into our AI character, and we'll say menu name is equal to, and then we can say shop inventory. We'll call it that. So what's it going to need? Well, we're still going to need those 3 things we mentioned. So let's make a serializable field here, and we can do a list, and we're going to make this list of items, and it didn't autofill system.collection, so I'm going to have to drag that in by copying it from another class, or it's going to give me grief. But items is equal to a new list, and we're going to say items. So I'm just going to quickly paste in system.collections.generic. And now we still need our other lists as well for the item capacity, and of course if the items are infinite. So we'll make another list for item count, or item counts rather. We'll make this an int. And then our last list is going to be a list of pools for if the item is infinite. And obviously all 3 of these lists have to be the exact same size, so we know if they're not, then something has gone wrong. So we're going to do a check for that, and we're going to return. So let's go back to the AI character manager here. There's a very loud street cleaner or something, like a dump truck on the road. If you can hear that, I apologize. Let's make a serializable field for character shop, and then let's go back over here into the character shop class. Let's make a public void generate character inventory. We're going to say from shop. Okay, I'm going to say from shop items, super specific. I'm going to make this require an AI character manager. Call it AI character. And now we are going to simply say if items dot count does not equal item counts dot count, and of course item infinites.count, then we know we have a problem. So like I said before, think of it this way: if I put in a straight sword in the first item list, I need to also put in the amount of that straight sword in the item counts, and then if it's infinite, in the item infinites. So think of it like this: every time you add an item to the item list, you also have to add the amount to the count, and if it's infinite, in that order, because we're going to iterate through the item list, but we're going to use the same iteration number in a for loop to also take the item count and the item infinite. Now you can do this differently, of course, but I think this is pretty straightforward. You can make it a bit more intuitive and friendly, but this will work as we need it to work. So I'm going to throw a debug.log error if none of the counts are basically in alignment, or if not all of them are, and we're going to return. Now, if they are, we pass that check. We're going to do a simple iteration through the items. And then we're going to say if items I is null, it shouldn't be, but continue. And then all we're going to do is generate an item by instantiating a copy. So we can say item, we'll call this generated item, and we're going to instantiate a copy of items I. So we're going to say is equal to instantiate items I, and then we just need to take the item count value, and if it's infinite, from the other lists. So we're going to say generated item dot item count. What did I call that? Not item count. Current item amount is equal to item counts I. So because we're passing the same I, these lists all have to be the same size, of course. And we're just going to ground through the line, do the same thing for is infinite, and take all of those values. Now, the last thing we do is simply say AI character inventory manager, add item to inventory, and we pass the generated item. And that should work. Okay, I'm going to go over into my data folder, and I'm going to create this new shop. I guess I'll make a folder for it first. We'll call it shop inventories. Let's go in there and do create. And let's come all the way down to shop inventory. And I'm going to call this tutorial shop inventory because this is the only one we have really. And now we're going to do some items, and let's just throw in let's throw in the knight's helmet, and then let's do 3. We'll throw in the straight sword or spear. Let's do the spear, and then we'll do the bow. We'll do the bow. Okay, so item counts. Let's do, again, we need 3 because we have 3 entries, and it's going to be in that order. So first is knight's helm, and then we'll do infinites. So we're going to do, we'll do 1, 1, 1 for all the counts. And we'll make the knight's helmet infinite, so it should just never on stock. Now go to your character shop variable and add in the shop we just made on your vendor. And now let's go to the AI character inventory manager, and let's make a public void for generating the shop's inventory. Now, if you've already generated the inventory, we're not going to generate it again. We're going to load it from the save data. So I'm going to make a comment. If the shop has already been generated once, simply load it, because we have to save this as well. If you guys want me to cover serializing this and saving it, I can. But with the knowledge we have already, we can do this. But I'd be more than happy to cover it. Just let me know in the comments. Also, this is where that character shop ID comes in, because we're going to keep a list of all the shops that have been generated already using this as an enum. So if the shop's already been generated, you're going to load it, and if not, you're going to generate it for the first time and then save it. So otherwise, generate the shop for the first time. And we generate the shop for the first time using the default character shop variable up there. So that's the items they will have the first time. And then we can say character shop dot generate character inventory from shop items, and we pass the AI character. Okay, so now let's call this where we need to. Player UI shop manager. So we'll repopulate the shop inventory. Let's go down and see where we're checking for the null entries. Let's go here. Shopkeeper dot AI character inventory manager dot generate shop. I'm just realizing I think I need to actually call this earlier because we're checking for nulls, but I'll come back to that in a sec. UI inventory slot under buy item. So let's do the logic now for actually purchasing the item. The first thing you want to do is check for the item value and see if the player has it. So if the player doesn't have the item value, they obviously can't buy it. We can do this by getting the local player from the player UI manager. We can compare this to where am I checking for ruins? It's probably in the stats manager, not the inventory manager. Let's see, player stats manager dot ruins. Yes. So if the ruins is less than the current item dot item value, then we know we can't do anything. So let's simply return. Now, optionally, you can make the text change color to red and fade out the item icon if you don't have the amount of cache, but I'm not going to do a bunch of stuff on UI polish because that could be hours and hours in and of itself. So number 2, check for remaining item count. So basically, if there's no items left, you can't purchase it. So we're going to say if the item count is less than or equal to 0, this shouldn't even be here anyway. We're going to clear the item slot, and then we're going to return. Okay, now up here, we should importantly also check to see if the current item is even there. So we're going to say if the current item is null, also clear the item slot and return. So let's just copy this, and then we're going to simply return. Okay, we're checking for null, we're checking for value, now we're checking for the remaining amount. Now we can actually get to the pass. If we actually get to this point, we can purchase the item. So we want to make an item variable called purchased item because we're going to instantiate a copy of the current item. And then we're going to say purchased item. And I don't think you have to say current amount because we're instantiating it, so it should keep that. But we do have to basically make sure we're not allowing this item to be infinite because that's a vendor only thing. So what we're going to do is say purchased item is infinite is equal to false. Okay, cool. Now, right below that, I'm going to say player UI manager dot instance. We're going to get the local player. We're going to get the player's inventory manager. We're going to add the item to the inventory, and we're going to pass the purchased item. We're going to say player UI manager instance dot local player dot player stats manager dot ruins minus equals, and then we're going to pass the current item dot value. So basically, we're subtracting the cost of what we just paid for this item. And then we're going to say if current item is infinite, or rather is not infinite, we want to subtract 1 from the stock. So we're going to say current item amount minus equals 1. Now what if you want to buy more than 1? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. First I'm just going to put this up here like so. And now I am going to copy clear item and return, because we can do a check for if the current item amount is now less than or equal to 0 and it's not infinite, return. But I'm just going to put it outside this if statement, because if it's 0 at any point, it should always just be removed anyway. Okay, let's save that. Now, I am also going to say purchased item dot current item amount is equal to 1, because we're only giving the player 1. So if you want to add multiple purchases, you want to basically make a pop-up for a slider, and then set the minimum value to 1 and the max value to the current item, however many's left, and then basically pass this value to this buy slot after you've selected it. I can cover this in a video, just let me know. I don't mind at all. It's pretty simple to set up. I'll probably even do a next video just in case, but if you do want it, again, comment down below, because I'm trying to get through as much as I can in the series, and I don't want to double back on things we've already done multiple times, and popping up a button like that is pretty straightforward. Well, we haven't done something like that actually, so I think I will cover it in the next video. Let's go to the UI inventory slot, and I'm going to override the select slot and deselect slot, or rather make them virtual. And then we can go to the UI shop inventory slot and override select slot. Now why am I doing this? Well, we want some different information when we do this than just basically checking out the item icon, and or rather the highlight item and stuff. We want to go to the player UI shop manager and make a header for a current highlighted item. And let's make 2 text fields, one for the item's name and one for its current value. And what we're going to do is every time we're highlighting an item in the shop, we're going to pass the current name and value of this item here, so we can see that updated in the UI. So we'll say current highlighted price, and then we're going to say the current name of the item. Now we have the current selected item here, and just cutting back into player shop manager, make sure you generate the shop. I'm just going to remove this. Make sure you generate the shop way up here after you get the shopkeeper, but also after you check to make sure the shopkeeper is not null. Otherwise, you're never going to make it there. The menu won't open. That's my bad. Let's save that. And just before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to go into the game here. And yes, the shop is loading. Cool. All right, now drag in your current highlighted item name here with your text. And I'm actually going to duplicate this field, and I'm going to cut the size in half of both of this, the original and the duplicated field, because the duplicated field is going to be the price, and the field I duplicated is the item name. But I've made my UI a bit too large here now, so I'm just going to go over here to the height and change it to 32 instead of 64. And I will change the font size to, I feel like 18 is too small. Yeah, it's too small. We'll try 24. That looks good. All right, cool. Then drag in your new text field for the item price down here as well. Again, this UI is pretty horrendous, I know, but I'm not going to spend any time on it. Programming UI is fine to show functionality. I do definitely encourage you to spend time on UI. It is very important. Make it look nice. So let's change these fields for the current highlight item and the current item price to public. Now, alternatively, you can use a function to set these if you want to. You probably should. I'm going to change them to public. So we're going to say player UI manager dot instance. We're going to say player UI shop manager, and then we're going to reference the highlighted item. Then we're going to say dot text, and then we can do the same thing with the price. But we're going to set this to the current item dot item name. And then right below that, again, we'll do the same thing, but this time we're going to grab the current item price dot text, and we're going to set that to current item dot item value, and then we're going to say dot to string. All right, so I am going to do a check, and we're going to say if current item is equal to null, we are going to simply return. And I'm just going to copy 2 of these and put those in here like that. And I'm going to copy item name and basically erase the value. So if it's null, the item name becomes nothing, and I'll do the same thing for the price. It becomes nothing. So the fields just aren't filled in. Let's save that and let's go back over to the player UI shop manager. I'm going to make another header called UI, and basically I'm going to add a little bit of polish here. I'm going to make two colors, one for regular text and one for you can't afford it. And now that I'm thinking about this, actually, let's move this to the World Utility Manager, because this can be used in a bunch of places if you plan to add any polish to your UI. We'll call one regular text color and one negative text color. So one would indicate that you cannot proceed, and that's true. That could pop up in many UI options, and one would indicate that everything's fine. So over on the World Utility Manager, I'm going to paste this in. We'll call it regular text color and negative text color. And what I'm going to do now is go back to my UI inventory slot, my UI shop inventory slot, and I'm going to do a check. We're going to say player UI manager.instance, and we're going to pass the current item price, text. And we're going to set the color. Now that we're going to go to current item price.color, we're going to always set it to the regular text color. So it's going to do that first. And then if you can't afford it, then we're going to set it to the negative color. That way, whenever you refresh the slot or go to another slot, it's going to start by going to the regular color. Then if you can't afford it, it will change it to the negative color. So we're going to say if player UI manager.instance.localplayer.statsmanager.ruins is less than the current item value, then we will change the current item price.color to the negative color. All right, let's do some reorganization here. So first, let's add an else statement here under current item equals null. And I'm going to short this if statement so it's not so ugly. There we go. And then I'm going to copy this and cut it and then paste it down here in the else statement. And then I'm going to get rid of this return. And instead, I'm going to copy two of these, delete them, and put them in the else statement as well. And then lastly, I'm going to copy everything and put it before the base.select slot. There we go. And that looks good. Now let's save that and go back into the World Utility Manager, set your colors. Make sure you do not forget about the alpha down here. Crank it to full, otherwise you might have an issue. There we go. That looks good. Nice bright red, easy to see. All right, let's go back into the Player UI Shop Manager, and I am going to go over here to my, where am I going? Populate shop inventory. Yes, no. All right, yes, this is the one. So we want to select a button basically whenever we load the shop. We want to select the first active button. So do a for loop. If it's null, continue. If the game object is not active in hierarchy, the shop inventory slot, also continue. Otherwise, let's create a button variable. I realized I think I just lost some of the cut there that time. So I'm snapping back to this for loop function already half done. But this is new right under disable any empty shop slots. So we're going to look for a button, and then we're going to call this first selected button. We're going to say first selected button is equal to get component button, and then we're going to do first selected button dot select, and then we're going to break the for loop. So what this does is it checks the shop inventory for the first active button that's in the shop, and then it will select that button. So if you're using a controller, it's already there. Now let's save that. Let's go over to the Player UI Manager. Let's make sure we're adding our Player UI Shop Manager to the close all menu windows, and we're going to say Player UI Shop Manager close menu after fixed frame. Let's save that. Now if I go into the game here, boom, you can see I can't afford the Knight's Helmet, but it did auto-select it, showing me the price, which turned red. It's at 100 runes, very cool. So let's actually give my character some runes by going to the Player Stats Manager, and I'm just going to crank that value up to, we'll say like 5,000. Looks good. Now if I come back in his shop, try to talk to him again, if I go to buy, let's see what happens. He's duplicated the shop. Okay, so I forgot to check to see if the shop's already been generated. Let's do that really fast before we come back. So we're going to have to go back into the AI Character Inventory Manager, add a private bool for shop has been generated, and this will also apply for loading the shop. If either happens, then we know we don't do it again. So under generate shop, we're going to say if shop has already been generated, return. And if not, right below that, we're going to say shop has been generated is equal to true. Let's save that, jump back into the game. Let's see if I can do the magic of editing here. There we go. Now if I go to buy, you can see the text is white because I can afford it. And if I click the helmet, it is adding to my inventory, as you can see, and it's not deleting from the shop. Very cool. If I go to the spear and the bow, though, it adds some inventory and it deletes. All right, cool. That's cool. It's starting to come together really nice. In the next episode, we're going to work on selling, and I'm not actually subtracting the runes from my inventory's UI either, or rather my HUD's UI. So although I have less runes, they're not subtracting. But just checking the list there, you can see, yeah, the helmet was infinite, so all those values are working fine. In the next episode, we will work on selling items and adding a bit more to the UI of this system. Thank you guys very much for joining me again. Thank you to my patrons. Genuinely, I am so fortunate to be here. It is only because of you guys this series can exist at all, and I get the time to make these cool videos. So you have my sincerest gratitude. I hope you guys enjoy this. Shout out also to the people who take the time to like the video and leave a comment. I hope you guys have a very lovely weekend. I'll see you next week.